Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out today. I'm Rabbi Michael Resnick. I'm the rabbi at Temple Emmanuel of Palm Beach, where Diane has been a member for many years. I'm going to say something, and I don't want you to be shocked by it in any way. This is the easiest funeral I'm ever going to have to be able to do. I don't even know if that was English. It's an easy funeral because when I think about Diane, a million stories come to mind, and every single one of them, without exception, is joyful. I love this woman. I first ran into her at Minyan on a Monday morning, just like this, and we were in the chapel, and she showed up. Wasn't the world's best attendee at services. She was a good attendee at the Kiddush afterwards, and I happened to bump into her, physically bump into her, and she did this ninja move, right? She was an old woman at that point already. And I looked at her, I go, well, who the hell are you? Like, what was that? And I just couldn't stop laughing and taking joy in what she said and who she was. And that from that moment till the very last time I said goodbye to her in the hospital the other day, it never changed. She always brought a smile to my face. She was always a joy and an inspiration. And I am going to miss her. She leaves a hole far larger than her slim figure in the synagogue that will never be filled. That she's irreplaceable. And we're also grateful for her life. So we're going to say a few prayers today. We're going to remember who she was. And I hope in some ways when we walk away from here today, we walk around with a little bit of Diane Hoffman, burning in our chest. I got one more thing about her. One day I was out in front of the synagogue, and Diane lives on the same street as us. We're at the synagogue, and she's just down the block in her house. And she drove by on a bike. This is probably around 6 years ago when she was only 90. And she yells at me, I go, Diane, hello. And she goes, I don't know what's wrong with me. I feel like I'm 40. And I go, hold on to the bike handles, you maniac. What are you doing? I don't know what's wrong. I feel like I'm 40. And she just rides off. And that was Diane a million times. Let's say a few prayers. The first I want to read is something called Eshit Chayil. This is only partially true for Diane, okay? You'll hear where it's not. But I think it's fitting, and I'd like to share it for her. What is a precious find is an Eshit Chayil, a woman of valor. Her worth is far beyond rubies. Her husband puts his trust in her and lacks no good thing. She is good to him, never bad, all the days of her life. She opens her hand to the needy. She extends her hand to the poor. She is clothed with strength and energy. She looks to the future cheerfully. Okay, now we get a little off. Her tongue is always guided by kindness. Close enough. She oversees the activities of her household. She never eats the bread of idleness. Her children come forward and bless her. Her husband praises her and says, many women have done superbly. You have surpassed them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vanity. But a God-revering woman is much to be praised. Extol her for the fruit of her hands, and wherever people gather, her deeds speak her praise. I'm going to say the 23rd Psalm. This was a woman who was unafraid about just about anything. I mean, she's 90-something years old, and I asked her, how are you feeling? I'm going to croak one of these days, but I don't care. I'm having a good time. That's Diane. She was 100% always looking positive for what's coming up. She had energy and hope and optimism, and the need to be able to go on without her as we walk through this valley of the shadow of death is something we should remember right now. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo echsa bino deshe yabitzeni al mei menochat yenachaleni nafshi yeshovev yancheni v'magalei tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech begeit salmavet lo irara ki atai madi. Shivtecha mishantecha emenachamuni ta'aroch lefanai shochan neged sorarai dishanta v'shemen roshi kusura v'yah. Tov v'chesed yirdafuni kol yemei chayai v'shavti b'veit Adonai la'orech. A Psalm of David, Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want, giving me repose in green meadows, leading me beside the still waters to revive my spirit, guiding me on the right path, for that is God's essence. And though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod comfort me. You prepare a banquet for me in the presence of my foes. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and kindness shall be my portion all the days of my life. So true. And I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. We're now going to hear a little bit about Diane. By the way, we're in the middle of, the summer season at this point. We're just starting. Normally, for someone 96 and a half years old, we don't usually have a crowd, but we do today. And it's a testament to who she was. And we're going to hear a little bit about her life and her personality and the things that inspired us. So we're going to begin. I'd like to invite Gail's brother, Dan Cantor, and Matthew's brother-in-law to come up and say a few words.
Super sensitive. Okay, thank you, Rabbi. Gail asked that I read this poetically and with a lot of gusto. So, and since she's watching, I'll do my best. Nana, Diane, Mom, your favorite thing to say when introducing me to someone new was, "This is my favorite daughter-in-law." She would wait about a second for that person to give an endearing remark before quickly adding, "And of course, she's my only daughter-in-law." There was nothing you wouldn't do to make someone else smile, even at your own expense. If you had 100 daughters-in-law, I would still have felt reassured by you. Your unwavering support, joy, and love for Matt, our kids, and me were ever present. You took on the role of becoming my mother after my own mother passed away a long time ago. You taught me by example, never questioning how Matt and I parented or lived. Your zest for life, boundless energy, and profound appreciation and gratitude for the blessings you were given never wavered, even in the hardest of times. I am truly blessed to have had you as a mother figure in my life. Your witty one-liners will forever echo in my mind. Your apples have not fallen far from your strong, amazing tree. I love you.
Thank you, Dan. I'd like to invite her son, Matthew, to say a few words.
course, over the past day, I've been, thinking about this very moment and standing here. And I don't think I realized what it means to me and my family, and obviously to my mother, for you all to be here and share in her memory. I know she loved all of you so much in her own way and to each of you differently. And I could say it a million times, but thank you all very much for being here. When you think of my mom, you think about tennis and how much she loved to play tennis. And that is true. But while she did love to play tennis, there's so much more to her than that. She loved to watch tennis. She loved to talk about tennis. And for those of you, and I know there are many of you out there who have played tennis with her, it was a unique experience. And I'll express my apologies to all of you who were her doubles partner, and you didn't think you'd get a free lesson when you were playing in a tournament with her. When Carol, Barbara, and I were growing up, our mother often forgot to feed us for days. But of course, she could recall every point of every tennis match she ever played. But still, the stretches of days that we went without our mother's cooking were among our happiest. I will say that she never seemed to mind cooking, even though my sisters and I most certainly did. My mother was such a bad cook that our dog used to take food out of her bowl and pass it to us under the table. But with food that that she didn't make or prepare, my mother had a very special relationship. For example, no matter how many cookies she ate at any one time, my mom had the uncanny ability to make each cookie feel like it was the only one on the plate. And she had a way with people too. My mom made other people, including me, feel smart. And that is truly not a joke about her intellect. She often used to downplay her brain power. But she actually had a tremendous amount of common sense and never failed to figure something out. She had the gift of knowing what she didn't know and never hesitated to consult with people. People who were complete strangers, she would call up, ask on the street, whatever was on her mind, and she would come up with a solution with all of the different information that she received. My mom just intuitively knew how to synthesize that data and put it to use. After she set the US record in the 100-yard dash in the 90 to 94 age category, there was a fair amount of downtime until the 200-meter event, which she subsequently set a US record for as well. But in between the event, there was a 400-meter event, and she had no intention of entering that. After all, you know, a quarter of a mile at age 90, we're talking about a woman who had no problem playing 4 hours of tennis, but hated to park more than a block from the courts because it was too much of a schlep. Like, could never figure that out. But anyway, as you know, her favorite daughter-in-law, Gail, encouraged her to take a crack at the 400-meter race. And my mother just said, no, 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 I just don't want to do it. It's too far. And Gail said to her, well, you can always just stop and walk off the track. And just a light bulb went off in my mother's head. She agreed to enter. That option to quit just never entered her mind, that if it wasn't working out, she could just stop. I mean, especially at an athletic event. So, of course, she went to the track and was waiting around for the race to start. And she struck up a conversation with, you know, a younger woman who was also running in the race, and asked her, what do I do? I've never run this far. I've never entered a race of this distance. And she gave her the technique: go fast down the straightaways, slow around the curves, straight again. And like I said, she just was able to take that information, synthesize it, and watching her just executed it perfectly. And that was my mother. There was one area where she did think that she could do more than her capabilities, and that was on the tennis court. I remember seeing so many of her matches when she went up against someone who was much higher ranked, who had been playing all of her life, who was stronger, faster, had better ground strokes, and my mom would consistently beat them. I don't care what sport it is, and I don't care at what level. There is no better competitor than my mother. There really was not. And those of you who've played tennis with her certainly know that. Even in her older ages, as her skills and speed declined, she always used to say that she was playing the best tennis of her life, that she was still learning about the game. She talked about something new she had learned at a lesson, and this is, into her 80s. And I'm convinced it was that confidence and having a passion and always looking at life like the best was yet to come that enabled her to live such a long, healthy and happy life. Before she picked up a racket at age 42, her sole focus was on her children and doing whatever was in her power to embarrass us. For example, at parties that she and my dad threw at our house, the guests would invariably be ushered into the living room, which meant one of two things. Our mother was either going to do her famous Tarzan yell, or she was going to sing and dance. And you remember we were mortified and fled the room as if a bomb was going to go off. But it took me a while, but I pretty much stopped being embarrassed when I realized two things. The first is no one can make you feel embarrassed. It's something you do to yourself. And I also started to appreciate the joy that she got from bringing joy to other people. She would write condolence cards to people and not talk about the deceased, but talking to the person she was writing and making them feel how big a part that person was in their loved one's life. I used to go to the bank with her. When she walked in, it was sort of like Cheers, if you've ever seen that sitcom. Everybody in the bank would stand up and yell, "Hey, Diane," and give her a big hello. And of course, they would all ask, "Where's my candy?" Because she always carried these little nips in her purse. The wait staff at Green's Pharmacy would, she would go in and sort of playfully insult everybody, putting Don Rickles to shame. And toward the end of her life, as her memory faded and her ability to run around waned, my mother continued to get immense pleasure from her grandchildren and cherished your visits to Palm Beach. And she relished each of one of you and all of your accomplishments, big and small. And most important to her was that you guys were all happy. It wasn't unusual for my mother to say when we arrived at the house, "Go enjoy yourselves, get out of here, have a good time." I mean, even though she was saying it in jest, I don't think she fully realized or acknowledged that we were there for her, and that it was my mom that gave us such great happiness. And then finally, and this is probably the hardest thing to put into words, and I think I speak for all of you, even though you had a different relationship with her than I did. She always made me feel that I could do anything I wanted. She said it, she showed it. And that confidence and self-esteem is something that is such a huge part of me. And it's a gift, like I said, I cannot put into words, and I can only hope for my kids that I have made you feel half as special as she made me feel. My mom passed away the day before what would have been her 67th wedding anniversary with my dad. And I like to think that she was sort of itching to celebrate with Dad, like it was enough already. And I can't help but be happy to think that the two of them are together. But again, thank you all for being here today to remember my mom's life. And she was a source of inspiration and humor, and as you said, optimism as well, and a really exceptional example of living life to its fullest. Thank you.
So one of the things Matthew left out in the story about the 400-yard dash, if you go online and you type in Diane Hoffman running, there'll be a bunch of videos. And one of them is a documentary about her running and beating the records, the 100-yard, the 200-yard. She happened on that day to run the 400 and set the world record for anyone in her age group. And what was interesting, she says in the documentary, what was the secret for running it? Well, someone said, just run it like the cops are after you. And that's what I did. And I don't know what she's done that she would have thought the cops would be after her, but she ran like the wind. So go figure. Carol, come up and say a few words about your mom.
Hard to follow my brother Matthew. That was beautiful. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, everyone, for being here. So I'm Carol Jason, Diane's oldest daughter. And over the years, though, I think most of you know that Mom started referring to me as her mother. So I lost the daughter title. And I know it was a joke. I always felt a little funny about it, but I think everybody became her mother to some extent. I was fortunate to be able to spend the winter months down here in Florida, especially after Dad died. Just wanted her to have some family down here. So my husband Joel acquiesced and we came down here. And if any of you have spent any time with Mom going out of the house, whether it's to a restaurant or the doctor's office, one of her favorite questions, especially to doctors, was, "Are you married?" And if he said he wasn't, she would look at him and say, "Oh, so that's why you look so happy." I don't know if you had heard her say that to anybody else, but the number of doctor's appointments that Lisa and I have taken are to the same joke all the time. Whether it was going to the doctor's office or going out to eat, one of Mom's favorite things to do was complain about how cold it was. There were never enough blankets or sweaters to cover her and warm her up. And in fact, if you've ever had the pleasure of visiting her at her house, you would have had to bring your own personal air conditioner. And all I can say to her caregivers, you are saints. For them to be able to breathe in that house while on duty is a miracle. So thank you. I don't need to tell you that physically Mom was way ahead of all of us. And I can remember one time when I was younger and we're shopping and my short little legs could never keep up with her when she was walking. And she would grab my hand, drag me down the streets of Boston to Filene's Basement or Jordan Marsh. And it was just crazy. And she was just walking. And I guess with Mom, there are just two gears, as you know, supersonic or sleeping. That was it. You all know Mom as an energetic friend and tennis player. And Matthew outlined her special qualities as Mom. There was none better. She, as Matthew mentioned, always put her children first. She rarely interfered or bothered in any of our lives. Unfortunately, I can't say that she practiced that same technique with her tennis partners. And I know Matthew mentioned that, but apologies also about that. I could go on with volumes and volumes of anecdotal information. As Matthew mentioned, the people that she meets, she knew so many people. She loved the people at Green's Pharmacy, diner. As Matthew said, it was just like a Cheers situation, even to the cashier. Everybody knew her. She was great at the Four Arts Center. She had lots of friends there. Of course, the congregation at Temple Emmanuel, the rabbi and everybody there. It was just all special treat. And we also can't forget those spontaneous chit chat sessions she would have with any stranger on the street and then invite those strangers to her house. The caregivers would call me and say, who is Mary? And I said, I have no idea. She had just met them on the street. The number of friends that Diane accumulated over the past 96 years is incalculable. I'm going to start with Lisa. I know I can't mention everybody, but Lisa is basically her third daughter and perhaps her favorite. Lisa, thank you for holding Mom's hand in the ICU. Anne Marie. Her lunch buddies, Patavan, Chris, and Rhonda and Beth, who is not here. Thank you for, paying attention to her and taking her out to lunch, whether it was the Cheesecake Factory or Trevini. She loved going there. Friends Marilyn and Connie and Peter. Peter, I'm looking for you, but I don't see you here. But Peter Benditson had known Mom since he was 10 years old from Boston. And she went to his bar mitzvah, and his mom and Peter's mom were best buddies from Boston. And she had him as her own personal doctor down the street. And he attended to not just dermatological needs, but he attended to all her needs. And bless him for that. Bill and Harriet, cannot thank you enough for being there. I don't know if Sharon and Mo are here, but Mom, look forward to seeing you every week at the house to help clean and help with her for 42 years. It's just amazing to me. And her Seaview sisters and Coach Sean, thank you so much. You know that was her favorite place, as Matthew says, a home away from home. Caregivers, Marie, Day Marie, Night Marie, and Lorna. Thank you very much. Being away gave Matthew, Barbara, and I, me comfort. Otherwise, we would have all moved to Palm Beach. We wouldn't be able to do it without you. And dear neighbors, Bruce and Debbie and Sophia and Manny, I can't tell you how much we appreciate calls in the middle of the night that you attended to them. Very comforting. Mom was quick and efficient, and I'll try to follow her lead. I just want to say thank you so much for being part of Diane's life. And I don't need to tell you, she loved you all. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Carol. A few more things to add about Diane, just from my perspective. In regard to bringing strange people home, it reminded me of a story once when one of the security guards at the synagogue pulled me aside and said, Diane Hoffman just walked outside and there was some strange guy there. She started talking. She just walked with him to her house. It was like, is that okay? I don't know. There's someone's there to keep an eye on him, I suppose, but that was, we saw it firsthand, some strange guy, and she talks him up and then they go off together for, nothing too much, I would imagine, but you never know. In any event, Diane and our experience with her at the synagogue, David Schreier, our temple administrator, immediate past temple administrator, was we both have offices with plate glass windows out on this little parking lot, which for some reason Diane enjoyed walking over and hammering on the window out of nowhere. God forbid she should go to the door where she knows where it is and press the button. Instead, she would knock, and David and I would invariably, depending on whose window it was, wah! It just popped us out of our seat every single time. And so we would walk outside, or one of us would walk out. Diane, what are you doing? Here, give this to your wife or something. And it would be popcorners, or it would be a little bag of, when she really got with it at the end, Tate's, those little chocolate chip Tate's cookies. But before, she would bring the nibs, right? Here, this is good for you and your dentist. And she would give it to us. Or we walk out and she's like walking around that thing and hammering on the windows. And I would walk out. I go, what are you doing here? She goes, just came to say hello. Here, take this. What are you doing? Why aren't you home with your wife? And whatever she wanted. I say, well, listen, go away. I love you. And she would, stick her tongue out, which wasn't just me. David got the tongue too, And it's interesting. I was never quite sure if she really loved me or I think she did. But the point is, sometimes she would, when we would have after a sermon or at Kiddush, she would say to me things such as, you're getting better slowly, or she would say, I don't know why your wife puts up with you, and some kind of comment of that regard. And sometimes it would be completely complimentary, and other times it would be this well-natured dig. And it didn't matter because how could you not love her? I adore that woman. And the thing you said, Matthew, about her kind of underestimating her mental abilities was something she said in this documentary I told you about. She was asked something, about running, and she said, this is a direct quote: "The good Lord gave me legs. What else? Nothing else. Legs." And that's not true. There was so much more to her, so much more to her. And when I went to see her in the hospital, Lisa, you were there, spending the whole day. She didn't want her to be alone. That was the friendship and what it evoked in somebody to sit by a dying woman's side. And she was not conscious at this point. And I said to her that, I loved her and that we all love her at the synagogue, and that we're going to miss her, and that she should say hello to Herb for us. And she's going to be great. And I said to her, I want you to give a good word to God on all of our behalf, because he's not going to say no to you for anything, And she lived an amazingly long life. And even with the difficult year or 2 years that she had, by the standards of people getting old and frail, she wasn't even close to that. And as of a couple of days before her stroke, she was having lunch with friends. The week before, she was at the synagogue, flinging comments, and taking a few cookies for the road. She lived an amazing life. And I will always miss her and remember her with joy. And I hope that's the same for all of us. No one's perfect in this life. We all have our ups and downs, things we should never have said, or things we did say or should have said. No one's perfect, but Diane came really darn close, and we will love her forever. And she leaves a space in our hearts that I don't know how we're going to fill, except by maybe filling it with the memory of a woman who brought such joy and such humor and such hope to everybody. May her memory be a blessing. May she rest in peace. I invite us to please rise, if you could do so comfortably. So we recite the El Malei Rachamim. It's a prayer in which we ask God to bring Diane's soul safely into God's keeping. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Beromamim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona Tachachafei Ashchina. V'malo kerushim v'torim k'zara ki amazhirim et nishmat Devora bat Avraham shehalcha l'olama b'garinte menuchata nabala rachamim astirecha b'sete kanefecha l'olamim v'yitro b'trocha chaim et nishmata Adonai hu nachalata v'tanuach b'shalom ha'mishkava v'nomar Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, to the soul of Diane Hoffman, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace, as we say, Amen. We are going to now escort Diane to the graveside. This is a woman who could pretty much do everything, but she can't do this. This is something we have to do for her. And so we're going to walk there, and we invite you to join us, and we'll participate in tucking her in safely. After the service, everyone is invited to go back to Diane's house on Seminole Avenue in Palm Beach. I don't know the address. 235. It'll be after the burial. There'll probably be cookies there, so Diane approved. So we hope you'll join us. And please follow us out as we go to the groups.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am going to take the casket out first, and I'm going to ask the immediate family to follow directly behind the casket. If you are unable to walk, you can have a moment to split today. Thank you.